Bill Meyer.
Thank you, Holly. Wow. It's kind of weird to see your picture up there. I think I'm wearing the same shirt. I don't know. Could be. Well, you know, economy and all, that sort of thing. Anyway, thank you for coming here, and thank you for watching wherever you happen to be. If you eventually watch the video of what goes on here today. Yes, I am Bill Meyer. I identify as a bull elephant, which if you've been looking at the headlines recently, I think that qualifies me to be a mental health specialist in the Oregon Health Authority. Did you see that story? Everybody see that story? I identify as a tortoise. It's like, and you're in the mental health world. Gotta love it. Gotta love that kind of stuff. But you know, it is kind of our state, isn't it? And that's what we're going to be talking about this morning for a little while. A year ago at this Patriots conference, I was talking about the power of no and the need for the GOP in Oregon to essentially break things and be non-cooperative. In the legislature, we do have some individuals who are happy to break things and be as non-cooperative and stop the communists as much as they can. But collectively, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, the GOP as a force in Oregon at this point has kind of been cowed. I don't know if you agree with me on that at the state legislature, but it kind of looks that way. And you hear the sort of things that, well, we can't walk out, Measure 113. I worked so hard, I wanted to become a senator. You know, there have been, statements like that, as if somehow being a state rep or a senator, your job is just to, be in the office and taking the campaign contributions and you've done your job. Well, we know that's not the case. That's been pretty disappointing over the last year since then. Not surprising. However, I must say that some people we have here today are exceptions to that. Noah Robinson, Dwayne Yunker. Put your hands together for Yunker. I got to tell you. I accidentally nicknamed him one time the junkyard dog, and he says, I kind of like that because wasn't it, Dwayne, I think you said it was your brother was nicknamed the junkyard dog. He's happy to take it on, kind of a family nickname. I like that about him because it's kind of like, all right, I don't care what the polite society is all about. It's like, I'm going to bite and chomp down on you. So people like these are welcome exceptions to what's been going on in Salem for sure. Oddly enough, after last year, we the people really took the power of no here in Jackson and Josephine County to heart. We transferred it to the wildfire risk fight, the map that we've been fighting here, Senate Bill 762. I guess the realization that we were truly on the menu under the guise of fighting wildfires by forcing you to build up your properties in order to prepare for the federal lands to burn through your area. Isn't that great? That kind of focused the mind quite a bit. No was our appropriate response, and I really have to admire what you've all been doing in Josephine County to make that happen, and Jackson too. It's funny how powerful no is when the Democrat tyrants try to fall back, and arguably Jeff Golden, Senator Golden, is trying to do that right now. When he was, I think he was kind of surprised, the fervency with how people fought back. It's like, no, I don't want to compromise on this. No, we don't. He's looking at it, I think, when he talked the other day about, we would like to withdraw this or repeal this part of the bill. I agree with Jeff from Selma, who was on my show the other day. He said it's kind of a fallback position. It's like, okay, we couldn't take this village, so we're going to fall back. Ultimately, it's our intent to just have it completely repealed, the whole thing, and start again. I wouldn't count on that victory, though, on the fire map until it's dead in the grave. And until it's repealed, it's not done yet. So keep the political pressure on these tyrants up. And, Golden, Pam Marsh in Jackson County, the type of people that I swear wake up in the morning and the first thing is, how can I screw with all of you? Every day. It's like, the sun is shining, the bums are panhandling in Lithia Park, and who can we screw with? But that seems to be the goal. And I don't know if they have good intentions or not. It's getting harder to read those hearts, I think. Speaking of heart, though, the local county measures. That's the other victory that we have to remember and think back. I think it's easy to forget. Last May feels like it's forever ago, with what's been going on. But the way Josephine County and Jackson County rejected all of those charter change measures, give yourself a hand on that. I generally have the heart of a prepper. Got gold, got food, got guns, that sort of thing. But my prepper talk today is a little more about prepping as to where the state of Oregon likely reacts and acclimates to the second term of President Trump. In some ways, Trump bought us some extra time. I love a biblical quote. I hope I have it right. Matthew 5:45. I should talk to who was the lady who was up here first? Dottie? Man, Dottie, you had the spirit, man. Gotta tell you, that's it. Sister Dottie's Travel and Salvation Show. Man, I gotta tell you, that was something. But Matthew 5:45. It rains on the just and the unjust. I think that's where we have to take that to heart and be prepared for what would be coming up. I admit that as happy as I've been about Trump's electoral victory, his style, his swagger, the 4,000 executive orders that are, making me chair, that kind of thing. My feelings about the Trump administration's effects on Oregon are somewhat mixed, and here's why. Every morning I'll wake up and I get ready to do a show, and my reaction to the news out of D.C. is, wow, hey, that's great, but, and then, wow, that's a positive development. However, because I always have to translate it into what does it mean here in a blue state with a supermajority. And that's why we have to be patient, and we also have to, it's kind of like that old Clint Eastwood movie, Man's Got to Know His Limitations, right? We have to understand it. I'm not trying to lower expectations, but we have to kind of filter it through reality of how it will play out in the state of Oregon. And that's what I wanted to talk about, what to expect. And we're still early in the game, not even quite 2 months yet. But one of the issues most concerning to me, it's a very common feeling among the conservative folks, is that, hey, Trump won, we're saved, and I can go back to my normal life. Boy, wouldn't that be nice? if anything, we're probably going to see more challenges. I wish that were true. If anything, life will likely get a bit more challenging, a little tougher, a little more chaotic for the Southern Oregon conservatives and Republicans and people who would like to be left alone, but will not be, because of the political realities of Oregon combined with the accomplishments, policies, and the goals lined out by the Trump administration, which will probably have some unintended or unexpected consequences for a blue state with a supermajority Democrat running things. And that's how we have to look at it. An area of concern, it's been top of my mind, and I know Karen England's certainly going to be talking more and expounding more on this later in today's event, is public education. I eagerly look forward to hearing more from Karen. In fact, I'm going to talk with Karen on Monday's show with a bit of a recap of today for those that didn't get a chance to maybe come to this event. But I look at what's going on right now. Department of Education, employment being cut by half. This is the federal Department of Education. Some buyouts, others, reductions in force, terminations, all being done by the Education Secretary, Linda McMahon, to ultimately deliver on the wet dream of Republicans. And this has been something I've been hearing talked about since Ronald Reagan. When I was just a pup, and I was probably a Democrat in those days. I don't know. I can't even remember what I was when Ronald Reagan was president. Isn't that pathetic? But I was a DJ. I just wanted to find chicks in those days. Where's the hot chicks? Well, they didn't pay attention to me, I assure you. But it was 1980, okay? It was a long time ago. I was 19. But anyway, shutting down the Department of Education, returning it and control of the schools to the states, right? That sounds wonderful. Doesn't that sound great, right? How many years have we been talking about that? 45, right? Probably ever since Jimmy Carter created it. Here's the deal. The way it's envisioned right now, is there'll still be federal money coming to the states, but it would likely be reverting to the way it was back in the 70s. Block grant programs, that kind of thing. There'll be a big blob of money that they write a hot check to, probably smaller because they're going to have to cut spending one way or the other. But there'll still be some rules attached to it, and then given to the state of Oregon, and then because the whole thing that Republicans have been asking about is that we want to return to the states because the states know best, and we're going to have all these little mini laboratories, 50 laboratories of democracy, and all that kind of stuff. Because they figure we know how to do it best. And the question you have to remember as we're moving forward here during the Trump administration is, how does that play with public education in the state of Oregon, once again, supermajority Democratic control? Is a high-quality, ideologically neutral, non-woke public school system just going to suddenly break out? No. Thank you. I appreciate the comment from you. Well, maybe in Texas, maybe in Tennessee, maybe in Idaho, maybe some other red state would be able to have that happen. They're kind of like going dancing in the aisles. Woohoo! A little more control back in the states. That's great. But I doubt that Tina Kotek's Marxist Education Department, apparatchiks, are going to be instantly transformed into, well, by the Trump administration, into lovers of the republic, normal people. I just don't think that's going to happen. They've got a lot of true believers in there. Now, we could see a few improvements on the margins, maybe a little less DEI, or maybe they'll just rename DEI. I've noticed that seems to be what happens in Oregon a lot. You'll see a lot of talk of emotional social learning. Yeah, a lot of that stuff has been creeping into the system. So I'm trying not to be a Debbie Downer about that. I'm just trying to be a realist about it and what could actually happen, knowing our limitations. Department of Education in D.C. is, and this is unfortunate for us in Oregon, it's likely going to be shut down and made more feeble right when the blue states needing a kick in the butt, like us, could really use a more conservative push, just to get it back to a version of normal, something in the normal. A school that would teach the kids not to hate the country necessarily, or that they need to cut off their genitals in order to be affirmed to their mental illness, and pleasing the island of misfit humans, and all that kind of stuff. That's why I always call it the island of misfit humans, and boy, I'll tell you, that island's big and getting bigger in the state of Oregon. Kind of like the woman in the mental health department of OHA identifying as a tortoise, and we're supposed to take her seriously, right? It's so funny, you look at Oregon over the last few years at these kind of meetings, at rallies, various other things. One of the reasons we've been so looking forward to the return of Trump is that we've been hanging on for daddy, haven't we? We've been hanging on for, daddy to show up and apply some discipline to what's been going on here. And instead of Trump cracking heads and beating Oregon's woke stupidity into submission, it appears that, now, it's early, so just understand it's early. It appears that he's got so many other things that he's probably fighting that he's throwing up his hands a bit and saying, well, we'll turn it back to the states and you figure it out. And that's not completely satisfying for us, so I think we have to gird our loins for that possibility. If anything, the Oregon Department of Education might even double down on crazy. I was reading a story from Tina Kotek the other day that she's looking for more money for the schools, of course. $17,000 a year on average around the state's not enough. I know. And they're preparing right now, even in the legislature. I imagine Dwayne Juncker could probably talk more about that a little bit later too. They want to throw more into the school budgets. Well, this could be under the guise of we're going to work around the Trump orders. They're saying, we're not going to do the island of misfit humans. We're not going to do gender-affirming care. We're not going to have dudes in the girls' bathrooms and on the sports teams, all that kind of stuff. And then Oregon just says, well, that's okay. We won't take as much of your money. We'll take very little of your money, and then we're just going to tax our own people more. We could see that. And so it's not a completely satisfying thing. And they may actually feel a freer hand at raising or trying to raise our kids to be good little wokey drones, okay? So, like I said, now what could ease some of the trauma and carnage that I was just describing to you, which is the Oregon Education Department, because we're number 49, as you know, and getting 49th all the time. But a voucher system, if that ends up coming out of FedGov or a push for that, that might help end some of the carnage, all right? But right now, it's kind of a wait-and-see approach. Oregon Department of Transportation, shifting gears now, that's broke in trying to find ways to build more light rail that no one rides, and put a new I-5 bridge in Portland, which there's no agreement on that one. And I'm thinking about the way this looks in transportation under Trump. We might have some fewer grant stream projects to force road diets and bicycle bum trails within our cities. So that could be a little bit of good news, once again, unless Governor Kotek decides, well, we're just going to, triple your gas tax and we'll keep doing more of what hasn't been working. Because you have to remember that sustainable development and road diets and climate-friendly, equitable communities, that's still official state policy. That doesn't change under the Trump administration. Greater Idaho project's looking better all the time, isn't it? Yeah. And maybe that's where we end up having to take it at some point. But another Trump executive order, in effect, and this one, of course, got me really excited. I'm thinking, hey, it commands us to open up our forests and get back to working there, if we can, and making things happen. Wow, right? How many people have even run for office in Josephine County saying things like that? State of Oregon, yeah, I'm going to do everything I can to get back in the woods. I love it. I think we all would appreciate that, actually using our resources. It would be a wonderful thing. Unfortunately, this is, once again, I'm just trying to be realistic. I'm just the cold dose of reality, in some cases here, that this is a great goal, but probably a longer time frame. Maybe a decade or more of hard work to make that happen. And policies would have to change to make that happen. Biggest roadblock, no political support on the West Coast from the senators that control these states. And ours. Senator Wyden and the Merc. We know that. No political support for any kind of harvesting on public lands, any kind of large scale. Maybe a longer economic downturn, which has its own set of problems for us, might change their minds at some point. It could be. But they're kind of true believers, and they're supported by the political supermajority in this state. So, no cut, no moo, and no real food production, really. This is another one of those wait and sees. Disasters and real super long-term challenges might sharpen some minds, but I'm just saying the way it looks right now with Trump. Trump can do a lot. In addition, the vast majority of mills, as we well know, I always shed a tear every time I drive past Rough and Ready. The old Rough and Ready there, and I remember what used to be there. And family wage jobs, and people could get out of high school and get a good job, and they were doing good things. And what replaced it was methamphetamine and misery, after that closed. And there are a lot of Rough and Readies in the state of Oregon. And a Rough and Ready will not be rebuilt, or any of the other mills won't be built too, if there's still the political risk of environmental lockdown. No one's going to put in millions and or billions of dollars into building anything to take care of, let's say, a Trump-ordered open up, unless there is a long-term plan to keep that open. Because if you're going to spend several million or $100 million and build a mill, you better make sure that you're able to keep that open, and that the next people coming in aren't just going to say, "Oh, you're closed. Sorry, we're right back to where we were." Okay. Now, Herman Bertschiger talks to me quite frequently on the program, and he was telling me another issue is who do we sell the wood to? And there's a lot of competition that we didn't have in the wood and fiber world that wasn't there in our timber heyday, post-World War II. So these are just the things that, yes, there could be limited getting back into the woods. Certainly we have to do something to start getting some wealth generation out of these lands. And that brings me to the next thing that is not getting talked about very much in the media, because I think it's kind of hard for them to understand. But this could be a game changer for our public lands. And what that is, a plan that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is pushing. In fact, he got so little reporting, it kind of shocked me, really. Do you remember a few weeks ago when there was Scott Bessent up there along with the tech bros, and they were all talking about we're going to do the AI thing, and we're going to put a lot of money, $500 billion or $500 billion, I think it was, 500 billion. Yeah, 500 billion, yeah, into this. And of course, I love looking at all the tech bros up there next to Trump and thinking, yeah, you're the guys that want to replace us with AI and put a Neuralink in our head. But I'll set that aside. Like I say, I see good and I see bad in a lot of this kind of stuff. But what Scott Bessent said is a game changer. And he talked about the creation of a sovereign wealth fund. And that kind of just got left on the cutting room floor, and nobody talked about it after that. And yet that is one of the biggest things, just huge, huge financial news, because they want to generate cash. The government's broke. They all know it's broke. And I don't have time to explain it all. I don't even understand everything about a sovereign wealth fund, but kind of the basics of it. It's about taking all of these dead federal assets, everything from public land to the public forests, to the mining resources, to the oil, to the minerals, and everything that's sitting out there unused, not being worked, and it's not doing anything. If anything, these lands cost the federal government and the taxpayers money right now. As an example, look at how we deal with our forests and even around our cities right now. Prescribed burns. We take tax money and we throw it at the prescribed burners, the professional arsonists, as I like to call them. The collaboratives, the Lomakatsi projects, I guess they're doing some good work, even if they did set some old growth on fire around Ashland. One of the guys who tried to protect it. It has a couple of years. Maybe they've learned better. I don't know. But we pay them to do the kind of work that reasonable harvests used to accomplish, right? And so I think when you have Scott Bessent and the money people talking about, hey, that kind of stuff's going to end, we have to find a way to actually put these lands and all of these resources to work and make a profit. And when the big money guys are saying that, I'm going to take them at their word. But once again, it's sort of a wait and see. That could be a really, really positive development because, you know what, you get a few $1 trillion of federal good stuff out there not being used. Do you think there's a way you can, make 0.5% a year on something like that, or 1% of its worth out there and generate $1 trillion or $2 trillion a year for the Treasury? That's kind of the plan that they're talking about. Because the Trump administration knows that they can't go to us and tax us another $1 or $2 trillion. It's just not there in the regular folks. We just don't have it. And people are under enough strain. But FedGov is broke. We all know it's broke. And they need to make some more money that isn't taxing some poor schmo like us, okay? Now, another aspect of the Trump administration that we really should prep for, economic disruption. In effect, we voted for disruption when voting for Trump. But as Matthew 5:45 says, it rains on the just and the unjust. We're likely going to see some economic rain temporarily in our smaller towns, cities, and counties because the state of Oregon hates us to start with, right? One person might lose a Forest Service job. Could be one of the best paying jobs in Lakeview, let's say, or some other small town. Another person may not get a Pell Grant. Perhaps SNAP benefits get tightened up so that 25-year-olds doing dope grows in Josephine County under the table. There's nobody doing that, right? but they no longer get their welfare benefits too on top of, their under the table income. Now, when I say this, I'm not being hard-hearted about this. Understand, I know the needs of people and then they're hurting. But when you take in $4 trillion and you spend $6 trillion, you're not going to get the nation's fiscal house in order by $100 billion in Doge cuts, which is really what has happened up at this point. $100 billion, even though it sounds big to us, still pretty small amount of money in the grand scheme of things with all the trillions that we spend right now. So, this means we have to prepare and keep our personal lives and finances in pretty good order. And in the coming disruption could hurt a bit. And we might need to be able to help our neighbors more than the past. So, if you have a good situation, keep working to keep your finances in good order. Prudent, low debt, the things that, that we're always supposed to be doing, but a lot of times in the go-go 90s and 2000s and 2010s, we kind of forgot about. Now, so that was a real challenge here. But there's another aspect of disruption that's going to cause some heartburn in Salem, and this is ultimately good for us. See, I've told you a lot of stuff that's kind of like, hey, okay, here's the problem, kind of the excrement sandwich. And so here's a nice piece of meat, and some tasty bread. We're going to be soon, in my opinion, getting the attention of the Department of Justice, good and hard, in this state, from Pam Bondi's crew, especially given Oregon's sanctuary state status. Will eventually be, pardon the expression, Pam Bondi and Tom Homan's bitch. Yeah, I know. Proper immigration law and deportations will be reestablished at some point because they must, all right? Some rule of law must be restored. Our current AG in Oregon, Dan Rayfield, doesn't really hold many cards in the immigration arena against the feds. You will likely not hear this reported much, though. Biden and Obama let Oregon kind of run wild. And in fact, they even paid for it and encouraged our wildness that has happened here, okay? Right now, Bondi's busy with larger states like Illinois and cities like Chicago openly defying President Trump. They will lose eventually, but it's going to take some time, and then Pam will likely turn her attention to us, California, Washington, and the West Coast, all right? Oddly enough, maybe you don't think it's oddly enough, but a lot of people might, Attorney General Pam Bondi may end up being, out of everything that's going on in the Trump administration, our best buddy in helping reform our state. I hope I'm right. I don't know. Like I said, so much of this is wait and see. I'm looking forward to her legally strafing our state government. I'm kind of like wanting to get the popcorn and just watch it because it's a single-party corrupt cesspool. We all know that. Yesterday, I was talking with my friend Rick Manning, who's from Americans for Limited Government. Well, now he's gone because this Monday, he's joining the Trump administration in the Labor Department. So I won't get a chance to talk to him every week, but I'm sure I'll get a note from him every now and then. In our conversation, we had a kernel of thought that gets me excited and most positive about Oregon's future under Trump. This is the part that really gives me hope what's going on here. And that is Trump reportedly working to task Pam Bondi to clean up elections in the various states. Yeah. This was really the golden ticket about reforming the state of Oregon. And can you imagine Pam Bondi and the crew putting a magnifying glass on Oregon's vote-by-mail system so that we can have a credible, fair, and clean state election process? Could you imagine that? Yeah, we'd love that. Our legislature has enacted rules and policies in cahoots with the Secretary of State office that works to obscure the election rolls and integrity, and it makes kind of a mockery of us voting. Now, I'm really talking about statewide elections. It's like, you know how it goes. You can't really audit the election. You can't look at the ballots. We count votes for weeks until we get the right vote, which means the Republican statewide loses. That's the way it works, okay? And ousting the Republican. Now, fortunately, here in Southern Oregon, I think for our local elections, I don't think we have as much of a problem with that. We still could have problems. I don't know. It doesn't appear to. Most of the time, it looks kind of right. It's the statewide tallies that always seem to feel fishy in the end. Fed oversight in Oregon's election process could go a long way to fixing the rot in our state. In the past, you've heard of the feds using, this is what would happen. Maybe in the past, you've heard of the federal government suing a state or a city over civil rights. Have you heard about those kind of lawsuits? You know, the police are too difficult or too rough on somebody or whatever it is. And so they enter into a consent decree with the federal government. And then they say, we'll behave better. But the federal government's kind of watching them. I'm imagining a consent decree from Trump's DOJ over Oregon's arguably dirty vote by mail. No ID required voting system. That's what we have. It'd be a beautiful thing. Hopefully, I'm not dreaming on this. Again, we'll see. Now, you're going to hear more next from Kevin Starrett. He's going to join the conversation here in just a little bit, as our corrupt state and judiciary works to strip your Second Amendment rights. But even Kevin and I are ultimately hopeful. Maybe he'll double down on this. I don't know. We're ultimately hopeful for a better Oregon under Trump's reforms. But we have to be steadfast and continue to resist and break things legislatively, do everything you can to obstruct the communists, while hanging on until the Trump cavalry arrives. In other words, much work still to be done. We need to stay strong. We need to remain faithful, especially, and not just engage in a hissy fit every time something doesn't quite go the way I would like or the way you would like. Of course, I will still say we gave President Trump our vote. We did not give him our brain. So it's okay for us to be upset, but we still, ultimately, we buckle up and we gird ourselves for a wild ride, okay? I really think it's what we have to look forward to. So let's let the process work. And thank you very much, Patriots. I appreciate you coming today. Let that process work.
Go ahead and introduce Kevin Starrett. He's going to be right up there.
Oh, okay.
You're going to be able to speak to him directly.
Oh, all right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we now introduce you to one of my favorite radio guests, a guy who is, gosh, I have to pull every phrase out of him because, he's just not comfortable talking. Said no one ever. But I have to tell you, there is no bigger defender of the Second Amendment here in the state of Oregon. And God bless Kevin Starrett, Oregon Firearms Federation. Kevin, welcome.
I don't know, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I have no video on this, so sorry about the quality. If you have video, sorry about the quality. It's very last minute, and I know we don't have a lot of time. But just briefly, so I think most people know that the appeals court approved Pressure 114 in a decision that very few people can make any sense of. While we plan to appeal that, the legislature now has House Bill 3075. And what that will do is actually make this considerably worse. So the fees will go up, the waiting period will go up, completely unconstitutional legislation, and in essence will end gun sales in Oregon.
Yeah.
When it goes into effect, immediately the possession of magazines will become a crime. The implementation under the bill, I believe, is July of 2026. So briefly, here's the situation. And I've said this over and over again, and I know that Republicans in the legislature are really angry about this, but the reality is that Republicans in the Oregon legislature are units. They have absolutely no power to do anything. They can send out press releases, they can write stern letters, but they're basically being slapped around constantly. And it's actually getting embarrassing. I mean, the informational hearing that they had the other day was 100% anti-gun shills. And the Republicans were told, well, you can ask the question, but they're not going to answer it. They'll send you a note with the answer. So the fact is that anything that the Democrats want to do is going to pass. The only purpose the Republicans serve at this point now is to provide a quorum so the Democrats can pass whatever they want. And all of the angry notes and press releases are ultimately meaningless. If 3075 passes, I've been told by the attorneys, I don't have an in-depth explanation of this, but Once 37, according to the town, once 3075 passes, our lawsuits are moot. That the law, everything we've done up until now will be meaningless. The appeals court will not hear it. Now, for that, from two of the attorneys, I'm going to assume it's correct, which means that the only chance we have at this point is in the courts, and 3075 has to not pass. If the Republicans are on the floor when 3075 is heard, they will have passed it. It's that simple. And I wish it weren't so, but it is. And the Republicans' position, Republican leadership's position is that we should be attacking the Democrats. The Democrats are doing what they promised to do. They from the beginning, they have said, we're going to crush this state. Paul Evans said, we're going to starve out the Eastern Oregon counties. They've made no secret of their contempt for rural Oregon and anybody who doesn't believe in their agenda. So they're crushing everybody everywhere. It is now, there's one thing that Republicans can do, and that is not participate in this insanity. So it's still possible. I think it's unlikely, but it could still happen. And I'm encouraging people, there's time if you go to our website, the last alert that's posted has links for where you can post testimony, sign up for testimony, you can go and testify in person. I will tell you the deck will be stacked, there is no question. The people running the hearing will give a lot more time to the opponents of the Second Amendment than to us. But we still need to get everything on the record. And we need to make sure that the Republicans understand that we sent them there to protect our rights, not to fill their pockets, not to grift, not to be corrupt, not to make $1 million a year like one Eastern Oregon rep does, not to put money in nonprofits that pay them like one Southern Oregon Republican does. It is up to them to protect our rights. If they don't, we have seen the end of gun sales in Oregon to law-abiding people. And I know Bill has something more to say about this. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I thank you for the opportunity.
Kevin, if you need more, don't worry about it. I'm not chasing you off. I assure you.
I understand that. Unfortunately, I have to be chased off because I only really had 10 minutes. But that's essentially where we're at. If what I've been told is accurate, that the lawsuits are a dead issue, if this passes, then that is the one hope we have. And unfortunately, from what I've been told by legislators that I respect, there's virtually no chance of a walkout. But if they hear from people, if they understand that we care more about what's good for Oregonians than we do about their political futures, then I think maybe they'll get the message. Because let's face it, many of them have said that all we care about is our political future. We now have House reps who are buying percentage seats, who send out fundraising mails every day in defiance of House rules. And why they want to stay there, they serve no purpose, they accomplish nothing, they can do nothing positive except to stand in the way. And so what I'm hoping is that they get that message.
Kevin, how many House reps could remain and still keep Foreman? What does it take?
Right off the top of my head, I don't remember that number. I'm sure Representative Younger will be able to tell you that. Obviously, quite a few of them are going to have to walk off the floor. They are led by Christine Drazen, who's essentially a liberal Democrat. I think she's like the last person who will lead something like this. On the Republican side, Dan Bonham has already been told he can't run for office again because of the deal that was negotiated by Tim Pinot, where he lost his ability to run again, and they gave the Democrats everything they wanted. So he has nothing to lose, but ultimately, who has everything to lose are us, the people of Oregon. And it's not just the gun rights, it's everything that we see, and every liberty, every right we have in the state is being taken away by people who, as you accurately pointed out earlier, just get up every day to see how we screw people. We still have the ability to stop this if the people we hire stand up and are more concerned about the rights of the people who hire them than they are about their offices and their parking spaces.
As far as fundraising, you still gathering it for a potential challenge?
Well, we're still gathering to pay the bills we already have. If you look at the bills that have been piling up by Tony Aiello's law firm, Tyler Smith's law firm on the appeal, whatever happens, there's still a lot of bills to be paid. And I can't say with absolute certainty what the future holds in terms of lawsuits, because the fact is that if they're correct, if our current lawsuits become moot and this bill becomes law, then the only option is another lawsuit. But of course, what they've written into the bill is that we're only allowed to sue them in their court in Marion County, where we would almost certainly lose, and then we have to go to the appeals court, where we would almost certainly lose. And so this could be another couple of years and, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars.
And at that point, the gun dealers are out of business and there's no supply, right?
I visited a gun dealer yesterday in Pendleton, and he told me that in recently he's had offers for his business for several $1 million, and now he's sure he can't sell it to anybody. I've spoken to other gun dealers who've already closed up their shops or are in the process of closing up their shops because they don't really see anything positive on the horizon. And as far as I'm concerned, while, as people who hear me on your radio show know, I'm not normally, I'm kind of not really uplifting most of the time, but I do honestly believe that we have one last shot at this. And there's nothing, the Republicans stand to lose nothing by standing up and protecting our rights, because they've already been told that, their votes are meaningless, their objections are meaningless. And they'll tell us, oh, we were in there fighting for you, but their fighting is, if they are there, they have voted for this bill.
If they are there, they have rolled over then. And the key then, you walk out, and then the bill goes away, ideally. And then, in order to come back in, the absences are excused in order to come back and do the rest of the business. Would that be fair? That's how you do it? And that's what Tim Knope did not do last time.
Right, precisely. He negotiated a deal where basically we gave up everything after we lost great legislators like Kim Thatcher and Art Robinson. And that was, in my estimation, not a coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case,
No, I think that was not a bug, a feature of what was going on there, unfortunately. And that's kind of the corruption that we face within our own team.
Absolutely the case, and the fact is that this is not business as usual. This is not something that is going to be a minor inconvenience that we can live with. There will be no possible way to lawfully acquire a firearm in this state because the requirements of the bill and the measure cannot be complied with. And there are so many parts of it that haven't been properly defined that even if a person wanted to teach the required class, it's unlikely that they would have the qualifications to do it. And so, the court's position is that it's not an infringement on your right to make you wait months and pay huge fees and jump through hoops that aren't even available to jump through. If at any time, in any place, it's still possible for a person to acquire a firearm, then this legislation is not unconstitutional. And of course, it's absurd. And there are many cases that are winding their way through the higher courts that are just sitting there doing nothing. And so while I think in the long run, the federal courts will find in our favor, it could be years off. So for the businesses in our state, the Democrats have no problem crushing. For the people who need to protect themselves in the rural parts of the state, or certainly the urban parts of the state, this bill will end all of it. And when you consider that ballot measure 114 passed with a smaller margin than the voter fraud that the Democrats admit to, is clearly not a very popular position. As a matter of fact, I think KATU in Portland just had a poll that 75% of the people who responded said, this needs to go back to the drawing board. The only thing, it's not positive, it's not what I would have wanted to see happen. The only thing that we can take from this, if it becomes legislation rather than a ballot measure, is when the ballot measure passed, it was, quote, a vote of the people. Mm-hmm. There was nobody to hold accountable. If the legislature passes this, there'll be people to hold accountable. Everybody who voted for it and every Republican that was on the floor when it was voted on.
Kevin, we have Julie who had a question. What's that, Julie?
Kevin said to go to the website. What is the website?
Oh, Kevin said go to the website, what Julie was wondering, and that's OregonFirearms.org, right, Kevin?
That's correct, and the alerts are all posted there with the links that are embedded, without the typos that went out in the email version.
All right.
Bill, I have a question.
Yeah, sure, what's that?
You own a 30-shot clip. What happens? Is that illegal?
Yeah, what happens for your currently owned 30-round magazines, let's say, Kevin? What goes on with this?
You're allowed to own them if you never leave the house with them. However, you can still be charged with illegal possession if you cannot prove that you purchased them prior to 2022. Now, the bill, and there's an amendment to this bill that says They won't prosecute anyone who purchased a magazine while the injunction was in place. But the problem is that part of the legislation goes into effect immediately. And it still requires that no magazines were purchased after the implementation date. And as you and I know, and as we've discussed several times, there is no way to prove when you purchased a magazine. It's impossible. So a magazine that you've had for 20 or 30 years, if they choose to prosecute you for possessing it, you do not have any way of demonstrating how old it is. So it is enormously dangerous. What the police plan to do, what prosecutions they plan to implement, I can't say, but it is absurd. As you know, receipts don't matter, digital pictures don't matter, none of that matters. So for magazines you own, theoretically you can still own them, but you're still greatly at risk.
What's the penalty, by the way? Another person asked.
I believe it's, I'm not sure, it might be a misdemeanor, but I have to go back and check, because the bill is changing and being amended even as we speak. So even as of yesterday, there was new information there. The point is that it's a crime, and it's an outrage.
Tim, you had a question too for Kevin?
Yeah, what is the NRA doing to help you?
What is the NRA doing to help you, if anything?
Well, the NRA hasn't been involved in a state lawsuit at all. I mean, in a federal lawsuit, they said that they were involved through the National Shooting Sports Foundation, but I don't know. You'd have to take that up with them. I mean, my big gripe with the NRA is that while this was on the ballot, while this was being, decided by the voters by a tiny fraction, they assured me that they would be bringing resources to the fight, and they didn't. And when they didn't, they told me that, well, they had miscalculated, were sure it would fail. And when you consider the tiny margin that this thing passed on, I believe that the big players who got involved later on in the lawsuits had been involved earlier, like even National Shooting Sports promised us the moon and did nothing. And so our organization, a handful of other smaller organizations, tried to fight this thing, and had they come to the table then, I think it would have ended differently and millions of dollars would have been saved. But as far as what they're doing, you're going to have to ask them.
All right. Anything else before we cut Kevin loose? I'll take one more question. Go
What
ahead.
does that do to tube-fed 22s?
Okay, what's that now?
The tube-fed 22s, like my 22, the tube feed?
Yeah, tube feed 22, that doesn't apply. Isn't that right, Kevin? A tube-fed 22 caliber rifle, probably not.
Currently, that's correct.
Yeah, that doesn't apply to that one. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you guys.
All right.
I appreciate it. Have a good meeting, and we'll talk to you again.
All right. Hey, thanks, Kevin. Kevin Stair at Oregon Firearms Federation. OregonFirearms.org. Okay, go there and do what he's talking about in the alert. You'll find out that. Okay, we're going to have a little palate cleanser before we. What's that now?
It's underneath there.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah.
Bill,
What?
can I make a quick suggestion? Based on what he said about the NRA, I would highly suggest that if you're a member of the NRA in Oregon, that you don't renew your membership and give them the money. Thank you.
Well, that's what I've done for a number of years. Now, unfortunately, I paid them 5 years in advance, so I'm still a member, for right now. Oh well. Now then, palate cleanser time, and then we'll go on to our next guest, all right? Here comes the palate cleanser. All right, who wants the Trumpy bear? Somebody wants a Trumpy bear. Of course you want a Trumpy bear. This is part of the fundraising here. Now then, the bidding starts at $20. Do I hear $20 for Trumpy bear? Okay, all right. Do I hear 30? 30? Anybody go above 30? 30. Do I hear 40 for Trumpy bear? What? Come on, everybody wants their little loving Trump bear. Back there? Okay. So we're at 40 for that. 40, 40, do I hear 45? 45, 45, I'm not an auctioneer, so. Okay, 45 in the front. Do we have 50? 50, it's a fundraiser here, 50 there. We got 55, do I have 55? 55? 55 for you? No, I have 50 back there, so we're, 55? Okay.
100.
All right, we have 100. Anybody want to top that? Yeah. 100 going once. 100 going twice. Anybody else?
Right here.
What?
No, I think he's going to get it.
Sold. $100. There you go. Thank you very much.
Let's hear it for Bill Meyer. He is a true
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.